spoken in Parliament. Some of them for the last 12 years haven't said a word in Parliament. Whenever there is business in Parliament that has key political interest or sponsored by political parties, they appear in Parliament and vote. So I think the questions that we've been asking ourselves over the years as we release this scorecard is what do we usually do wrong as Kenyans in terms of electing our representatives? The other question that we usually ask ourselves is, do members of Parliament really understand their role as the representatives of the people? Just to begin with, from the word go, we have not been getting it right in terms of voting our representatives. And that's why even when they go to Parliament, our interest, our business as Kenyans usually takes, it's not considered, it's not usually given so much importance. And if you look even at the bills that have been assented by the President, that have gone through the legislative process to the end, most of them are sponsored by the executive. Most of them, a huge percentage of them, are bills that talk about public finance management, bills on budget, bills on sharing of revenue, bills on collection of revenue. Because if those are not passed or enacted with speed, then the government will come to a standstill. So to a large extent, what has been happening in the Parliament, in our Parliament, is executive business.
Fair enough. Before I engage Nerima, let me ask you, because sometimes some of the legislators who've been listed as the most silent ones, sometimes they ask questions regarding the credibility. How is this survey done from your end as Mzalendo Trust?
Well, in terms of the methodology of coming up with this scorecard, the methodology is watertight and beyond being questionable, because the documents that we use are public documents, Parliament documents. What we use to come up with this scorecard is Hansard, which is a public document. So we usually do a content analysis of the Hansard and a speech count of the Hansard. So we count how many times have you spoken in Parliament. So it's public document, it's the Hansard. And now, apart from the Hansard, I also understand there is much business that usually happens in the committee, and the reason as to why we don't consider, or our scorecard does not factor in committee business, is because of our Parliament's extent to which it is open, to the extent to which it is transparent. Up to date, we don't have a public or a digitized committee Hansard. So that makes it difficult for us to consider committee business. And that issue usually comes up when members of Parliament whom we have ranked poorly, they usually pick that issue of, I have been speaking in committees. But again, now this is even if you visit committee proceedings, you start a committee in the morning. By the time it is in the afternoon, the members of Parliament that you started with are not the same members of Parliament that will end that committee. So I think it's just an excuse that they use. But in terms of the methodology, it is the Hansard that we use. The bill tracker, Parliament's bill tracker, whatever we use is Parliament's documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Nerima, coming to you, some of them MPs have been listed as the most silent ones. We've seen Kapsiret MP Oscar Sudi appearing on the list not once, not twice. The same with Irene Kasalu, Honorable Irene Kasalu, the woman representative for Kitui. But specifically on Oscar Sudi, the Honorable member said it's not a must for him to come to the House, so long as he's serving his constituents. And some of his constituents agree with him that indeed it doesn't matter whether he appears in the House or not. Now, that begs the question, do members of the National Assembly understand their role as legislators? Because the National Assembly is a house that makes laws, they do oversight. Now, and apart from that, on the other end as well, do the electorate and Kenyans understand the role that should be played by their elected representatives?
First of all, I'll just say the saying where the empty vessels make the loudest noise. Clearly, that's what that result shows us when it comes to that member. But there's a bit of confusion in terms of the role of the MCA and an MP and a senator and even ward administrators. There are people in the public who don't even know that they exist. And there's still a lot of education that needs to be done, and there are plenty of civil society organizations that are doing that. Government struggles with the resources to do that, so sometimes there's also a lot of partnership in that regard in terms of educating the public on the roles of particular offices and the kind of budgets that they have access to, and where they as a citizen can be able to participate in that process. But once you are elected, you do have 3 particular roles, which you've already mentioned. And so for him to say that he doesn't necessarily have to speak or be present, that is a flaw to begin with. Then why have that particular position? Because it's very clear that you're supposed to be present to be able to make laws and to be able to do oversight. And when you're not present, then you're not able to do that. So what we have here is an individual who is going, I guess, around the law or their mandate to be able to meet with constituents, and that's the confusion that it brings. Because for the kind of politics that we see in the village, it's about having the ability to see where resources are going. And a lot of times, people struggle with the position of Senate, for example, because they don't have the direct access to county budgets. And so they would rather go for governor because they're able to play around with the money, and people are able to see where money has gone, and you're able to see markets, or you're able to see stadiums, you know, big things. And we do not appreciate how important it is for the paperwork, the paper pushing, the accountability. It still holds a very important role that many Kenyans do not see. But someone who I believe has managed to articulate some of these issues is Honorable Okiya Mtata. That's my senator. So to be able to debate issues in Senate and show how important it is to have a vocal representative and the role that they play, I believe that he's slowly educating the public and the masses and why it's important to have such an individual who plays an oversight role very strategically. But it's going to take a bit of time by the time the entire population understands that.
Fair enough. Coming to you, Mr. Odhiambo, there's the issue of priority. What do legislators prioritize? But before I ask you that, just in relation to what I asked Nerima, now, is there a need for more civic education to ensure that Kenyans do understand the people they elect into office and what roles they should play? Because if we have Kenyans who probably feel, so long as my MP is doing work in the ground, so long as he's ever present, then it doesn't matter whether he appears in the National Assembly or not. Is there a need for more civic education?
Kenyans know what should be done, but mass ignorance is an asset for the political class. Why do I say this? Kenyans are very much aware, because if you look at our literacy levels, we are doing fairly well above many countries in Africa. So as much as we push for civic education, the media does civic education all the time. People like Nerima Wako have been in the civic education space for a long time, and she can give you actual reports of their reach. We've had in the past very good inroads with civic education in this country, and therefore I don't think, in my very honest opinion, that civic education could be the gap in terms of representative elections. But the point is this: the biggest gap that we have in this country is Kenyans seem to me to be having an addiction towards abusive relationships. I don't know why this is sustained, because over the almost 2 elections or 3 elections, you realize a particular trend that somebody is defined to be in the opposition and is called the people's watchman, okay? But they end up electing anybody to become the head of the executive on very abusive lines. You know so well that this person has a particular history, because reputation is everything. But you still go ahead to vote for this person out of what I call relationship sympathy, that this person looks like me, walks like me, talks like me, so he could be me. It's a very wrong thing that Kenyans do. So I don't think if the gap is civic education. The thing is, Kenyans have an addiction to abusive relationships. Maybe we need some national counseling on breaking the bond from abusive relationships.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Wamere, let me come back to you. Looking at the least vocal MPs in the National Assembly and how they voted on crucial bills. Now, for example, on the finance bill, 11 of the 20 voted yes on the finance bill, according to your report. Now, 17 of the 20 voted yes on the Rigathi Gachagua impeachment, and 11 of the 20 were absent during the voting on former CS for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi. What does it mean? What does it show? What should, what message does it leave for Kenyans and the electorate, especially on the issue of the finance bill, because that is one thing that Kenyans across the country widely expressed their, dissent over it.
Well, first of all, before I go to what that means, let me reply to Odhiambo on the issue of civic education. Truly, there is a gap in terms of civic education. And if you look even how we have done our legislations in terms of making sure that that gap has been filled, Parliament of Kenya has not done so well. Since 2013, when we had the first parliament under the post-2010 era, we have having a parliament that we've been having a law on public participation that will ensure that those things happen. And it's a constitutional bill, but up to this particular moment, it has not been enacted. So it's a bill that needs to come up with the aspects of civic education and aspects of public participation. The other thing is, if you look to some of the demands that Kenyans make to their members of parliament, then that also will tell you there is a gap in terms of what is expected from a member of parliament and what Kenyans are demanding. There was a study that we did a few years ago on demands that Kenyans make to their members of parliament. Some of them are attend to my wedding, attend to a burial, my son wants to go to school. And those are not the things that a member of parliament should be doing directly, but indirectly, by making sure that Kenyans are insured. They don't need to call you to go to hospital. So having said that and making sure that the aspect of civic education, that gap exists, in terms of voting, looking at the voting trends in parliament, you will see a member of parliament is not active in terms of legislations, not active in terms of asking questions on problems that Kenyans are facing. But when there is an impeachment bill that is so political, they will come to parliament and vote as per the needs of their political leader or their political party. And when I say political party here, we don't have political parties in Kenya. We have entities that are owned by individuals. So when you see an MP voting based on a political party, they are voting based on the demands of the person who is sitting at the apex. So if you look at that particular trend, it will tell you that most members of parliament do not act according to the interest of the people. They act according to the interest of the person at the apex of a political party. Also, that tells us something else. When it comes to an election, there are people who will go to a certain constituency and say Nerima Tosha. Now, we as the voters, we won't look at Nerima's character, we won't look at Nerima's ability to lead us, just because someone said Nerima Tosha. So that's when that person is voted in, is not laying, is not loyal to you guys, is loyal to the person who said Nerima Tosha. So we as Kenyans, we should sit down, investigate ourselves, investigate what we really need, what we really want for our country. And when we do that, that's when we'll get it right in terms of our representation, because representation is very key. If we vote people who do not have our interest, so many things will go wrong.
Fair enough. Yeah. Nerima, coming to you, and I don't want to go back to what he talked about, the issue of public participation, because this is a report that they also focused on, and they say of the 51 bills that were tabled, 51 bills that were tabled in the National Assembly, 51 of them underwent public participation, and the average number of days that these bills underwent public participation was 12 days. Now, on the social health insurance bill, it underwent 7 days of public participation. The Rigiji impeachment underwent 3 days. In the Senate, 35 bills underwent public participation. The average number of days was 13. Now, the shortest window of the public participation was the digital health bill, number 57 of 2023, which underwent public participation for 3 days. Now, first things first, there's been a debate on what is public participation and how it should be conducted.
Yeah, there's been conversations even whether public participation is important, which is a concern, because this particular constitution gives the public the right to be able to engage in terms of where they can air their voice directly. And we also saw when there was the conversation around the 7-year term, and people actually submitted their opinions on the email address that was provided, and only for the particular member who fronted that bill to come and say, yes, 60% of the responses were positive, and we all know that they were not. So even in public participation, we are lacking a standard framework. You've mentioned a number of days, one, and even how it's announced. Sometimes it just comes as a surprise. I know Mzalendo and ourselves, we're constantly looking at, you know, when they've made an announcement, a gazette notice, and then you're trying to spread it into your networks for people to participate. And then there's also the issue of finding a transparent accessibility. We do not know how many. We do not know where they lay. We do not know the percentages. We do not know what is adequate participation. And I think what has assisted us is media, even the public forums that we see in the town halls, and having media present and seeing people vocalize their issues and their matters has shown how important public participation is. The Kenyan people actually love to engage. They want to be involved. And I think that it's something that, rather than limiting and reducing the public's engagement, because we've seen members saying that it wastes a lot of time and everything that they front is being negated, it's about opening up and realizing that this is what the Constitution demands. It's very progressive, and it shows that we are depending on Kenyan people to understand the laws that regulate and be part of that process and to be engaged. But we are pushing for even digitized processes of collecting opinion, you know, using platforms like Police to be able to have certain recommendations to come to a conclusion. I think our government just needs to open up to that, because we are talking about a population that's majority young, and they're expressive. They've grown up in an age that uses social media a lot, so their opinions they're happy to share. But you have to show that they're involved in the process. Otherwise, you will struggle with leading this generation. If you do not listen to this generation, you will struggle with leading them.
Fair enough. Coming to you, Mr. Odhiambo, it is very concerning, because the issue of public participation is a very crucial issue. And when you hear leaders like the minority leader in the National Assembly, Honorable Junet Mohammed, saying, in fact, the issue of public participation should be scrapped. In fact, he was very vocal just a few days ago saying, why do we need all this public participation? It's very concerning coming from such a leader.
Let me say it is very concerning and quite demeaning on the intelligence, collective intelligence of the Kenyan populace. Ian, there's a challenge with the decision-making process in this country. And that is why the Constitution drafters, in their best of minds, thought that there needs to be public participation. I have a degree in journalism, all right? And I have a clear mind on how this should be done. We have held discussions with those we sit next to help guide in how a public participation framework should be structured. Whatever you have seen is to be laughed at. The bill that is being proposed is to be laughed at. Because if you look at, and allow me to go back on this, if you look at the BBI proposal, there was a proposed Office of the National Rapporteur. Okay? BBI was not bad wholesomely, because public participation was taken care of in the BBI process. But since we politicized the process and bastardized it, it was placed aside. We need, number one, to establish the Office of the National Rapporteur with representatives at the ward level, okay? And the decisions that are made, clearly they will structure how this needs to be done at the ward level. Any decision that is made at the ward level should transition into law, just like the finance bill transitions into law. And I dare say that maybe by the time Nerima Wako, my friend Wamere, and I will be in parliament, we'll have a clear shift in how things will be handled in this country. Because we don't really need the MPs to be making decisions for the people. Clearly they cannot. We've seen that. Because they're trading on the mass ignorance as their asset, or as their key asset in politics. But the people are so sharp, as Nerima has said, this generation of Gen Zs need constant flow. We are way above, or we are way past press agentry. We are now into public relations. And public relations does not mean apple polishing. This goes to constant engagement to the public. And it will only happen if and only if we have a clearly structured public participation bill that clearly defines how do we engage at the ward level on not only what I call street buzz issues, but also issues such as finance bill. Like, for example, and I'll tell you, this finance bill failed because the people are not engaged. Whatever you are seeing, even the Supreme Court pronounced itself that public participation is an animal that needs to be structured. The people may be into the future. The executive only needs to say that we have allocated 200 million per ward, okay? So let the ward people sit and decide what are they going to do with their money. Because we cannot believe any further that the political class has the will of the people, because they're businessmen. And Honorable Raila even said the other day, and I'm happy that he came out and said it strongly, that some MPs, if not most, are doing business with the Constituency Development Fund, which, as you're aware, CDF, or development of the constituency, is not part of the role of MPs. And maybe in the future we may need a conversation on if really we need Parliament, the National Assembly. We may need the Senate because we are overrepresented in this country. This Parliament has shown us continuously for over 10 years that they don't have the interests of the people at heart. And that's why they're failing, because they go there to protect their interests and not the interests of the people.
Fair enough. When we were talking about the AUCC, you said you have worked for Raila Odinga. Now, Raila Odinga did come out and, he expressed his displeasure with some issues in the country. And it's been, is referred to as the father of democracy.
Of course.
He's been championing for the rights of Kenyans. But what should Kenyans make of a situation whereby Raila Odinga comes out to castigate certain policies, ensuring that, probably calling for more engagement of Kenyans on crucial issues, but his key lieutenants come out to say matters like public participation should be done away with? I mean, why can't he put his house in order?
The people are bereft of ideas in ODM, of course. People like Junet are bereft of ideas. That is something that is well known in public discourses. We have people like Gladys Wanga, the national chairperson of ODM. You hear her speak, you know there is some level of substance in this party. So yes, Honorable Raila gives independence of thought, independence of intellect, power to his people. But there are those who have insisted to hang on sycophancy even when Honorable Raila does not need that sycophancy. In fact, we don't need it. And so you will see so many people from ODM, including myself, who are very neutral and quite forward-looking.
But some of these people, they've been rewarded in recent weeks. For example, Honorable Junet Mohammed, he was rewarded as the minority leader by the party.
Well, as I said before, Ian, we need a government before we look at any other thing. A bad government is better than no government. This government had failed. It is only the leadership of Raila Odinga that is making this government stay. If he steps out of this government, we'll be in chaos.
Now, let me ask you.
So forgive him.
Before we take a break,
yes.
The government has, not done much. With the entry of Raila Odinga, has the government done anything?
Of course, there are things that are being done. There's no rehearsal to be a president. So he's learning on the job. But Honorable Raila has the advantage of having worked with all these presidents. So Honorable Ruto will be guided very well under the tutelage of Honorable Raila Odinga, and he'll do well. But if he doesn't do well, the democracy space is very open. Nerima Wako will contest for presidency, maybe, I hope so, or Wamere, and we will decide when that time comes. Or even yourself. Why not?
Of course, there are genuine concerns regarding, what the government has been up to and whether there has been a positive turn since some call it broad-based government was in place. ODM, of course, says they don't have any pact led by its SG Edwin Sifunas. He always says there's no pact within between Kenya Kwanza and ODM party. But we do know that top officials of the ODM party are now in government, and they're the ones who are calling shots left, right, and center. In fact, Honorable Alias Joe, the former deputy leader of the ODM party, said he will not allow Kenyans on social media to castigate the government. And he said in his own words, "Ukileta noma, nitaleta noma." That in itself is a statement that raises concerns across various quarters. And Kenyans on social media have told him off. And again, Mr. Odhiambo, that raises concerns in regards to what the party that they belong to stands for, and ensuring that issues that are affecting Kenyans are addressed and their concerns are heard, because most of the issues that Kenyans are raising online are key issues. And one of the things that led to the anti-government demonstrations is the fact that the Kenyan people are not being engaged in crucial issues. And when you have leaders, CSs, who are castigating the public instead of listening to what they say, and then it raises a lot of concerns. But on that note, we just take a brief break, and then we'll be back to continue this conversation, even as we look at probably the issue of quorum, because members of the National Assembly have been accused of skipping sessions. For example, the National Assembly, at least 40 sessions have been adjourned due to lack of quorum. That again raises concerns regarding the role played by members of the National Assembly and the issues that they prioritize, because 20 bills have been assented by the President after they were passed by the National Assembly. Those 20 bills were government-sponsored bills. We'll talk more about that after this short commercial break.